Hello, everyone. I am your host, Dushyant Kanungo, bringing you another episode of the UX Banter podcast. Our guest today is a seasoned design strategist and entrepreneur with over 26 years of experience in web design and digital strategy. He's redefining the web design industry with a unique subscription based model, helping businesses move beyond traditional agency frustrations. A Squarespace expert, he's passionate about delivering high value, scalable website solutions. CEO at Resonant Pixel Company, Wayne Pelletier.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
So it's honor to have you on our show, Wayne, and how the journey has been like. I mean, you are a East Coast guy. You lived in Boston for most of your early career, and now you're living in Atlanta.
Yeah, I took a job in Atlanta. I got started sort of web design was the family business, which I think some people find surprising in the mid 90s,
Uh-huh.
20 actually 30 years ago. And I got started in 96 with the family business after bouncing around a little bit after being in the US Army and tending bar and selling cars and really not sticking anywhere. My stepfather was like, "Why don't you just come help me with some marketing?" And all I did was like cold email, cold outreach calls, or email replies, make sure the conference room had water, make sure there was coffee. Wasn't paying me much, but it exposed me to it. And while we were there, I just started consuming all of the books. Because at the time, the mid to late 90s, there were just a ton of books coming out. Design on a Shoestring, there were the Jeffrey Zeldman books, there was the Eric Mayer books on CSS. If I don't know if you remember the CSS Garden, there was just this ecosystem of early code thought, especially from a front end development standpoint. And JavaScript was really just getting its sea legs. We didn't have Ajax or any database interactivity back then, but I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And they kind of pulled me back into the lab, the design lab, and I just started banging out web pages and really enjoying it. So when I took the job in Atlanta, I just wanted a title like designer. Like, is this nepotism? Do I enjoy this? Or is this legit? Can I just get a title and maintain it? and and it's interesting in that transition, I was way out front from a web design, web building standpoint. And a lot of universities were just starting to spin up programs to like have a class on HTML or CSS or JavaScript. And I was getting requests to kind of participate in different programs, different communities. And that was really exciting because it was a very fast moving. It was moving as fast then as AI is now,
Mhm.
right? When you think about just rapid growth, it's like every 3 months it was exponential. So when I took the job in Atlanta as a designer for a small startup agency, it's a huge international conglomerate now, but we were just a dozen people in a loft downtown Atlanta. And I found that I really enjoyed it, and I had gotten my sea legs into a career that I could really build a life around.
Oh, nice. And right now, you are a bit away from what you did in those days. I mean, right now, your business works with a lot on the low code, no code platforms and,
Mhm.
delivering that point. What do you think is the differentiator between all those coding days and now with the low code platforms?
Well, I think understanding code and how things are built goes a long way to being able to build better things no matter what platform you're on. And no code, I wouldn't call them no code so much. They're definitely low code, but just like an application like Webflow or Framer, where you really can't use that if you don't understand CSS.
Mhm.
That's going to be a tall lift because all of the tools are named after the selectors and the entire structure of CSS and its lexicon, right?
Yeah.
So a tool that is more total WYSIWYG or closer to that, like sorry, I'm throwing out all these acronyms. What you see is what you get. Like a low code builder like Squarespace or Wix or Canva, Card, all of these things. Having an understanding of how code works really helps you think ahead from a responsive standpoint, from a user design or usability standpoint, and really understanding how to communicate. But these systems also serve small businesses really well because they don't have complex maintenance needs where it can be a time or a cost suck for a small business that is an extraordinary disservice to them.
Mm.
So these systems do what they're meant to do. Yeah, they kind of their marketing targets DIYers, but these systems also do a good job of getting out of the way so that the business owner can just go run their business and not have to worry about a lot of things.
That's absolutely a phenomenal way of looking at things. You and I, when we were talking the last time, you mentioned something about being in the business of content creation, but
Mhm.
not exactly doing that. Can you care to elaborate on the?
Well, I don't know if this is a hot take, but I think that we're all in the business of content creation. Once you have a website, you basically have a shack in the woods. There's no
Mhm.
traffic, there's nobody around there without doing some kind of marketing and at the addition of content, right? When you consider a few things are true. Recency is relevancy. Inbound and top of funnel can only be increased either through links or search, which is technically a link, right? And that's why we have an entire industry or SEO and paid search. You can drive traffic to the website. It's going to cost you time or money, time in content or money in paid ads from on any platform. It could be social too, though. I don't always throw social in there because the social networks don't actually want anybody to leave and go to your website.
I think that is also they have leveled up to a point where you don't need to have the website per se. I mean, a lot of people who can just sell things on Instagram and there is just a buy button there, takes you to a
Mm-hmm.
checkout page in some platform and does not rely on you having to have that sort of entire website and a domain name that is custom to
Right.
what is being sold. It's just the trust factor that if you are seeing an ad 20 times a day because you're not leaving Instagram, you are
Mm-hmm.
sooner or later bound to buy something. And that too, that has been seen multiple times. That makes perfect sense. So the small businesses, rather than focusing on the entire development saga, they can just simply adopt to these tools with your help, and those things can be just executed correctly. So we were also talking about the post website world. How does
Mm-hmm.
that?
It's actually a solid segue, my man. Well, it's related. You mentioned social channels having, you didn't say profiles or business pages or profiles, but they all have a home where you can have your things in one feed, whether it's your Facebook page or your LinkedIn page or your company LinkedIn page, and you get your personal LinkedIn page, you know what I mean? And Instagram, YouTube, they all work that way. They all have like a user profile page.
So is the era
People,
already over?
yes and no. It depends. What we're I think what we're knocking on here is, do you need a website? And the answer absolutely is it depends. I talk to people sometimes and they're like, I've got this revolutionary product for something like toe fungus and I want to put up a website. And I'm like, how many customers do you have on your list? And they said, none. I'm just getting started. I said, you absolutely do not need a website. You'll be wasting all of that time and money because you're going to move one unit and you can be paying Shopify 150 bucks a month for a 15 or $35 SKU. You know how many units you have to pay? You get a math problem. So they don't always need a website. So yes, the social pages are the first phase in a move away from a website or IP based visual World Wide Web platform as we've known it. My hot take here, my thought is that it's going to move toward a feed, right? What we chatted about was the browser as we know it may not be the same in a couple of years. It may be some AI preference. Hopefully, it's not as gross as like that early MySpace stuff where anybody could change anything they wanted. And it was just this array of animated flashing everythings and gifs out of the wazoo. But I think that if we have an AI based browser or a browser that is smart enough to know your preferences because it's contextualized on our desktops, on our
Well,
laptops.
how is it going to be different than the algorithms or
Uh,
which the targeted content which is served to you?
well, if there's still a request, I don't know how it comes in. AI is going to move to the desktops, right? It's going to move into the operating systems. I don't know that it's always going to be these third-party chat bots. That seems extraneous. The idea being, if content is a feed and brands don't build out their social pages with a lot of effort because they want attribution for the brand, so they want people to go back to the website. They have yet to relinquish control and figure out the analytics challenges of cross-platform sales instead of having one marketplace that they own and control. The resistance comes from the fact that when you have an audience or you make sales on another platform, and it doesn't have to be social, it could be commerce, it could be eBay or Amazon or Etsy, right? When you sell something on another platform, the people that bought that are not your customer. You literally can't connect with them. You can't contact them. There's no way. It is absolutely, you're in a black box. So that's why businesses want to drive traffic back to their website, because they get control, because an email list is a tangible thing that you own. Anytime you send an email out to that list, you can sell something.
Right.
Amazon or Etsy or Instagram, Facebook could all just tomorrow decide, you know what? Even if it's misinterpreted, this content is some kind of violation, and we're going to freeze you, put you in some sort of probation period, or shut you down altogether. And then you lose all of your access. The problem is those
Isn't
channels you sell fast.
something similar happened with TikTokers crying about the ban that was about to come into force, and they were like, "We spent everything in our life. Our life depends on our 7 million followers or whatever that they have.
Right.
And suddenly, if that is blocked, then we will be out of work." Now, how dependent they were on a platform that is governed by some other country, it's hosted in some another country, and then you are abiding by the rules because your livelihood completely is not in your hands. So I think the website, that data that people are willing to share, keep, fetch, use has to come from the website. So yes, I think that gives a broader context as to why the website will be not yet over or not over yet.
Right. Well, I
Um,
think it'll be different. I'm not saying it'll be over. I think the website as creative and brand expression will probably be over.
Cool. Right. So here I just had this idea that when the AI comes to my desktop, I rather have him scan my entire hard drive and tell me that what sort of person I am. I should be able to direct to a particular folder and say, read this. This is everything that I want you to know. And now help
Mhm.
me do anything that I'm going to do from this point onwards. How cool would that be, isn't it? Or I can just add them to my Audible subscription, my Kindle library, and then
Right.
you know exactly what sort of things that I like or want to translate out in the world.
Yeah, and that's the promise of agents, right? And agents are now just becoming a thing that is sort of consumer accessible. Previously, they were only accessible to people that understood bigger code infrastructures, right? Using Anthropic's API per se. But now that Zapier is launching agents, I use an AI business and content creation tool that has agents inside of it, and it can make decisions. The problem with a database or a knowledge base that is informed by our computers, and Dropbox figured this out the hard way, is that it doesn't know context. So think about it this way. If you rewrite a document, or if your mind has changed over time, but you have old documents of ways you used to think or ways you used to do things, right? If you have an old SOP on your hard drive and a
Uh-huh.
new SOP on your hard drive, which one is it supposed to know? Is it date based? Is it file name based? Right? Context is going to be really, really difficult. And we personally, our workflows don't currently support contextualizing things other than having really poorly named archive folders somewhere on our hard drive where we just dump old crap, or right, or there's always a way, like say in the Finder, or when you're on a Windows machine too, you can sort things by recency.
Mhm.
But recency in this case is not necessarily relevancy. You could just be drafting something, or you could be journaling and dumping thoughts that should not be contributing to the context.
True. And in that case, that you may have to look for a document that you wrote or had for 2 years back, which you need right now for the reference. And it is not as recent, but it is relevant. So the context becomes the king, and it always has been, I think.
Mhm.
So there we are. Everybody is talking on the same lines. And I'm really excited that what tech to focus on. So CES this year was not as hyped as you think would be, but I'm looking forward to South by Southwest in Austin this this spring.
It's in the spring. I think it's usually in March,
Yes, it is next
late
month.
March, right? Yeah.
So I'm hoping to the first target is to make sure that we get to exhibit. If not, then at least I get to attend. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Good for you, man. Have a good time. It's a great one.
So anybody who is listening out there, catch me in and around Austin. If I'm not in the conference exhibiting, I could be visiting, and if not visiting, I can be seeing loitering around outside the conference, outside where
Good
the dance
times.
tracks are going to be. So give me
Looking
a
for fatty foods.
I love street food in Austin. I can tell you that the all the Mexican food and which is served outside. I'm a big fan of food that comes out of Texas. Uh, Fine. So with that, let me ask you a few questions, if you don't mind, in a rapid succession.
Go for it, because I haven't upset enough people with all my speculative AI talk.
Mornings or evenings?
Mornings,
Indian food or Mexican food?
Indian food.
Uh, okay, you're just saying that. Um,
No, I'm not. There's a large Indian population around me, and there is some fantastic food. See, I live in the southern US, and Mexican food is everywhere. And while I do love Mexican food, I like spicy. I'm a
Indian
spice
time, right?
lover. And the Mexican food is amazing, but they only have a few ways where they make things really intense. Whereas with Indian food, there's 100 ways to make things incredibly intense.
All right. The food that you can actually cook when in a jiffy.
In a jiffy, ramen. I'm a ramen geek. Give
Always?
me ramen or ramyun or ramen any day.
Cool. And your favorite YouTube channel?
Wow, didn't see that coming. I'm going to say Greg Hickman. Well, I could probably say my own because it's the one I find the most fun,
So,
but I
guys,
also don't find it as inspiring or influential.
cool. So, Resident Pixels is the YouTube live show where you can find Wayne talking about everything digital and web related and on the topics that everybody should enjoy. So, go follow, check it out. And while we are at it, do like, follow, and subscribe this channel as well. It's called UX Banter, which is everywhere.
Good for
Okay.
you and getting something you can proliferate across all the socials.
Okay. Any book that you can recommend to the listeners?
Well, I do have a very entrepreneurial mindset. So it's not code related, it's business related. But Built to Sell by John Warlow is an absolute mind job that will blow people away. I re-listen to it annually because I need to reset the mindset around operations and productization of services, and having to remind myself of the context of why I started down that path to begin with. And it's just awesome.
And that was going to be my next question, but you just segued there already, which is productizing your web services. It's
Uh,
a very different sort of offering, productizing it in a way where it is no burden to anybody who is coming into the fold, and they are
mhm.
getting something which is up and running. And that way you have the fixed set of customers for a contractual period or whatever time that you're going for. how difficult is it to sell, and how differentiators that what you are bringing in, and you feel that it's a model that is a winning one?
I really like the model. And if you've owned a small services company or been a freelancer, or even if you've worked on the agency side of things in a bigger company, you've seen or experienced the feast famine cycle of projects, right? Big project, everybody's busy and life is humming. A dip where there isn't a lot of projects. If you work at a company, you're laying off staff or being laid off. Or if you're a freelancer, you're like eating instant ramen instead of making good stuff from scratch, right? So the idea is to level out revenue so that it's mostly only ever growing and being concerned more with churn instead of sales once you hit a certain point, right? So what I like about the productization model for service is that it removes a ton of friction even if clients aren't necessarily aware of it, right? So they go from being clients to customers. Now I'm on the hook to deliver and uphold promises and guarantees, but I'll take that any day over having a few months of not enough sales, right? So the way recurring revenue works, it like and mine in particular is you just subscribe and we go make the whole website and it's only a few $100 a month. It's not even expensive. But if you don't have a productive web property, it gets expensive very quickly, right? So that's why I mentioned you need to be in the content game, period. There isn't a way around continuously adding value to this web presence as sort of a lead generation or productivity engine for the business. So when there's no barrier to the requests for updates, content additions, fixes, redesigns, anything like that, adding pages, the fear is that people will just dump stuff on you. But that's actually not true. Turns out giving you a bunch of work to do is itself a ton of work to do. So everybody wants to do that. The second fear people have is that clients could just leave and then you won't have made up the time investment. And that's also not true because hiring you is a ton of work and going to hire someone else is also a ton of work. So clients don't just bail. I have no contractual lock in, right? So there's no long term contract. Clients can leave anytime they want.
Hmm.
And if they left after 2 months, listen, my hard costs are covered because Squarespace is not expensive, but nobody does. Almost all of the subscribers have been around since they first subscribed, several of them for 2.5 years now. So it's a really amazing model. And that's why I like that book, Built to Sell, because once you understand that it's easier to sell one thing and it's easier to do a better job of delivering one thing for a very specific audience and do it better and then build your systems around that one track. It's just incredibly efficient and provides a ton of value to these businesses.
Hmm. And with that, I believe that there is a lot to learn from the book that you mentioned, and also the idea of the business model that you we just spoke about. My question is that how do you cover the user experience side of things while doing so? Because there has to be some knowledge about the people set that we're talking about. I mean, of course, we are talking about websites that do not have that, business dependency, because business is something else. This is just the information that they want to put across, isn't it?
Well, from user experience standpoint, I have made hundreds of websites in the last 29 years, like hundreds of them. And I have a deep understanding of a lot of different industry categories and also user behaviors across them. So we don't make science out of research because most of these businesses are small businesses. They've never paid for usability research. Um, and they don't have enough traffic most of the time in their existing websites to reach any kind of statistical significance, even if you were to test, right? They're looking for very basic things on the website of things. They're looking for an increase in credibility because their site's been hacked and it's covered with Russian wristwatch ads. That literally happened once. Or it's like really old photography. They're out of touch with a designer, a developer. They have no idea who to talk to. And it's all out of date, maybe the wrong email address, wrong phone number. They don't know how to do it themselves. They're
Mm.
just in a tough, tough spot. So we rescue them out of that and make now having a website easy and fast. The process, I've removed the friction by making updates unlimited. So we don't typically do like 3 comps and say you get 3 revisions and that's it. I don't care how many times we have to revise it. We're going to revise it until you love it. It doesn't matter to me because I'm focused on the lifetime value of that relationship. I'm not trying to extract as much soft cost as possible from the project being spun up.
I mean, as an entrepreneurial point of view for any designer, I mean, what you're saying makes sense if you have that sort of backing or the quantum of the customers. But so you already had the business of web design, right? And this is something, a service offering that you recently started, or say 3 years, 4 years ago, or it has been you've been doing this for quite some time.
Well, I've always made websites. I did it on the side, even if I worked for an agency that didn't make websites because they were like a media company and it was totally non-competitive. Even still, I don't care. Always have a side hustle. You will be dumped one day. So I will say this: when I productized, it allows me to it allowed me to be a lot clearer about whom I serve and what we do. The problem with being a generalist, and I get that anxiety leads us to being a generalist for a lot of different reasons because you want to be able to jump on any kind of opportunity. The challenge with it, it's hard for people to refer you out when you do anything or you're willing to do everything. It's really hard for someone who's not you to explain your business, to explain what it is you do. So they will just send people to you because you're nice or you're smart or they enjoyed working with you in the past, right? And those are not tangible business reasons. And those referrals, a referral, the boomerang life cycle of a referral is really short when you're a generalist. It can be much longer when you specialize in something.
Amazing. And if I have to say, what advice would you give to your younger self or a young listener who wants to follow in your footsteps as a designer, as somebody who has been in the web development and the design ecosystem for as long, and as an entrepreneur, all things combined together? What would be your take?
This is unorthodox thought, but my advice to younger professionals is go to lunch. And I realize it's more difficult in a remote working environment, though there are usually Slack channels and things where you can get to know people, schedule Zoom calls with people on the team to get to know them. Hopefully, leadership is doing something to operationalize culture, but especially if you're working in an office, go to lunch with your peers. If you're a young professional, no matter what it is you do, whether it's in you're in research and analytics, development, design, account service, media, it doesn't matter. Get to know your peers, ingratiate yourself to them because when you're in your 20s and early 30s, you're getting a lot of really incredible work done and you're building your book. I worked at this company and we helped this brand. And that story starts to compound, right? But the people you did it with when you're 40, they by that time they are all director of this, VP of that, president of something, or they've gone out and now they own a company and they need help and they're going to think just like we do, just like I do, just like you do. You think about who have I worked with in the past that knows how to solve this, and you ping them, you reach her, you network, or you post something on social and they'll reach out. Like going to lunch and really getting to know the people that you are collaborating with now pays dividends. When I talked about the boomerang, the distance of the boomerang with the return and the life cycle of referrals,
Mhm.
that is playing the referral long game because one day you're going to need to sell a
The
service
product.
to somebody you worked with 30 years ago, and they're gonna be like, oh yeah, I liked you. You're doing what now? I know 3 people that need that. That's
Absolutely.
how it works.
Amazing advice. And I would say that that sort of networking. I mean, it's not about networking. Let's not be selfish, but making good friends
No,
always is a good idea. A friend of mine said that if I ever needed 100 rupees, I don't want to ask one person 100 because they might, come back and ask, like they may not have. But I can ask 1 rupee to my 100 friends each, and they won't hesitate to give it to me. And that's way I can still have 100 rupees and 100 friends. I mean, they won't mind lending me a rupee. So,
no, they wouldn't. Yeah, it's being generous of yourself, right? In order to become friendly with someone, you have to be generous, you have to be a listener. So that process is sort of natural in and of itself, of being generous with your time and attention with people and getting to care about them and having them become, caring about you. That's how you build future relationships that, feed your future self.
absolutely correct. And with that, I would thank you, Wayne, for joining our podcast today. And again, repeating, anybody, please follow Wayne Pelletier. You can search his name on YouTube and find his channel where he does live shows. It's called Resonate Pixels. And also, at the same time, search for Dushyant Kanungo and don't follow Dushyant Kanungo. Follow UX Banter podcast on YouTube.
Yeah.
Um, Available on LinkedIn as well. All the platforms which are Spotify to YouTube to Amazon and Apple, Google Podcasts. You can find me anywhere. And Wayne, once again, it was a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. This is a lot of fun. You got a great show. I've listened to a few back episodes and I'm enjoying catching up on the catalog.
Thank you. And to all the listeners, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. And see you next week with another great interaction if I can find somebody to talk. But that's where it is. Thank you very much. And let's connect back. Bye.